Right. Justin, you have a comment.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a light bulb moment or a sort of dud or duff light bulb, but it was quite interesting because I asked you a question before Brian came on, which is where you spent your holiday, and the sequence of questions that I asked and the sequence of questions that Brian asked were exactly the same, and your answers were exactly the same. And so, I mean, that sort of prompted various questions. I mean, have we got some sort of niche in our mind in which, the answers will be pulled out according to the questions asked, but which doesn't require fresh thinking? Is it a paradigm for our whole culture in which we've got everything sort of laid and it's just pulled out of us by different sort of inspections or questions? How far are we actually thinking in the present when we answer things that are so well ordered in our own minds? I mean, it was just interesting that we followed exactly the same sort of series of questions and answers, though, of course, I'm a different person from Brian, whatever our ultimate sort of homogenous spirit might be. And from different parts, and yet you answered in exactly the same way, and I think it was almost exact. So is this a significant situation, or is it just rather sort of ordinary? I'm not sure he's listening at the moment, but you never
It
know.
might be. We've got something we'll be talking about in a moment about
Oh,
DeMilo, but no, that's really, really interesting. How I think if somebody asked me an identical question to somebody else, I think I sort of unwrap the same answer without thinking that I've done it because it's the easiest route to go. If you said to me, I need
It's
a
a
different
sign of our
answer,
oneness. It's a sign that we're all really joined in that place where the questions are coming from. So it's like when you're in an audience and somebody else asks a question and you realize that's my question. And it happens many, many, many times where you have a question and you find somebody else is already asking it.
we progress as a group. The conversations we are having are very much more about what it is to be in the present. These sorts of conversations aren't general conversations of the average bod. We're becoming much more present to what's going on. And so we notice what's going on, all of you, we as a group, the sorts of questions we ask ourselves and the sorts of things we're interested in. Some great, I ask all sorts of physicists interesting questions, and the question which came up for me recently was they say the universe is 36 point something billion light years away, apart, or as big. Then I asked the question, whichever direction we look, now just listen to this, because whichever direction we look in the universe, the edge of the universe is always the same distance. What that means is wherever we are, we're actually in the center of the universe. And I keep asking myself, how can that be so? Wherever you are, the distance to the edge of the universe, either way, whatever side, is always the same distance.
can I argue with you?
Sorry?
Can I argue with that? That is a presumption that is on that made on the basis of the measurements that your astrophysicist friend has made. But we don't know
Yes.
that in the same that in each direction it's equally far. We're assuming it's a bubble. It well may be, of course, but how can we know? And
They
of
do
course,
they they do
we're the
know
center of
that.
our universe.
They do know that with some confidence because they can measure the difference to the edge. It's the edge of the magnetic sphere, magnosphere, which is the edge of the universe, and they can actually measure the distance between that and where we are. It's that's saying there's something I've come across which is extraordinary that we're always, according to physicists, we're always in the center of the universe. And wherever we are, it is the center. It's extraordinary. It's quite a scary thing. It's what Einstein, one of the scary things about this. is that you're always in the center. And when Plato and Socrates talked about it, they said if you could describe God, God is like an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. Now, put that in your head and think about it, reflect on it. One single conscious entity, one single consciousness. So whatever idea appears in one part, it appears everywhere at the same time.
Findings about animals that seem to learn when the experiments on them or their behavior patterns are the same in one hemisphere and without connection with particular events. The animals, usually birds that I've seen in terms of this picture, learn the lesson. And you can easily argue, therefore, that there is a sort of common, I won't call it brain, but a sort of consciousness that affects their brain.
They call that collective consciousness. It's a collective conscious.
But don't you get the feeling when you say these things that though they make sense, that somehow it's the comfort value of being able to put a handle on these absolutely unthinkably vast happenings in the universe? And then we say, yes, well, it's like a bubble, and wherever you are in the bubble, it's the same distance for the circumference and everything. Well, that makes sense in the analogy. But isn't there a feeling you have that somehow there's something a bit more complicated behind it all?
Not really.
No? Not really.
Because they've now measured it. They've accurately measured it and show how they measured it. I've been reading a whole book, a study of it, how they do it. And they call it the redshift. They can tell exactly how far a star is away, how fast it's moving away, the distance it is from us. And they found the extraordinary thing is that whatever measure they take, whichever direction they go in, the edge of the universe is exactly the same distance. And
don't get me wrong here. I'm not suggesting that these findings aren't not just fantastically interesting, but affect our perception of where we are and what it's all about. But don't you get a sense behind those simple or reasonably simple physical calculations that there's something at work which we don't quite understand? We understand that it's like the flickering shadow on Plato's cave wall. We understand that. But what on earth is behind it? Or what in the universe is behind it? I'd agree with that.
Well, people like the Jesus Christ and the Buddhas and that have found it. And there's people like Plato and Socrates, they've seen it for themselves. They can see it.
We're taking that on trust, Roy. I mean, it may be true, of course. I'm not saying that they're not right. But I mean, with a lot of these ideas, you actually need within yourself to have a real belief that stems with your thinking. And it stems with yours. And I don't say it's wrong. It may well be right, and it's fascinating to hear. But really, there's these big imponderables behind it that Nora's talking about.
Of course, there's always imponderables. There's always another step to go. Shall we have a look at, we did our sort of 2-minute just to get some practice. Have we had any experience during the week of really being present? Have we practiced being present? Have we meditated every day and just sat and just practiced being present? This is the key to actually unwrapping all of those questions you're asking. It comes from that. If we don't meditate, if we don't actually go into absolute presence, we'll never find it. It'll always be conjecture and stories and faith, and people go to church because they're told something and they should believe it because they're told it. The only way we're going to find it out is if we see it for ourselves, and that's what we're here for.
That's right. I mean, what I find, if I'm setting myself these questions and I'm sitting down to reflect, as I would call it, as opposed to meditate, which is what most people call it, the answers I'm getting, funnily enough, often bear no relation to the question I'm asking. So the answers.
Well, that's probably true. In that case, it may be true.
Relative to your statement, Roy, about center, for me, awareness has no location. So cannot have a center.
No, well,
but when awareness comes through a physical body, like through senses and perception, then it has a center in space. and time. So in that sense, this is the center is where we're perceiving from as awareness in this dimension. But when we step out of it, like in a deep dreamless sleep, the awareness has no location, has no center.
Well, this is what Plato was saying. The center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere.
Okay, well,
That's what they're explaining it. But when we measure it, actually physically measured it, it's actually exactly the same distance from one side of the universe to you to the other side of the universe.
And you're talking two different
And
things.
what that says is
you're
wherever
talking
you
dimensions,
are
Roy.
consciously. Sorry?
That's interesting, what you say about being bigger. The impression I get is actually, especially listening to these dimensions that Roy's talking about, that we're infinitely smaller. I hear conversations like this is whether almost everything we're saying is in a large degree designed to give us some comfort, to make us feel that we're not as unimportant as it looks as if, actually, objectively speaking, we are. I mean, you just have to walk down a busy street and see all these centers of the universe walking around, each one thinking they're, all these things we're describing of them, the center of a universe, and there are billions of them we can just see. And yet we persist in thinking of ourselves as so important. And I'm just wondering whether an awful lot of our philosophical structures here are designed to give us comfort rather than to actually plumb the deeps.
Designed by who?
Designed by who? Is that your question?
Yes.
Designed by, that's another big question. And that's another, how on earth, or as I said before, how in the universe did it all happen? And even your dimensions, we've managed to sort of plumb the perimeter of a particular sort of physical and physics question. But we don't know what's on the other side, and we don't know how far, what is on the other side may be giving a nice picture to it.
We're it. There's no
other side. How on earth can we say that? Billion light years away, and we know what's on the other side? Nothing.
We've always been there. We've never not been there. We're denying ourselves that we are everywhere at once. That is it.
Well, that's we've been living in imagination. I'm not sure yes. I'm everywhere at once.
Let's see what De Milo has to say. Just hold on. I've got something by De Milo, which I think is quite nice, and we'll have a look at it. Otherwise, we'll be going round in circles for hours. Hold on a second. Let me see. Share. Right. Share. Yeah. Okay, where am I? I think that's it. I hope so. Share. Yeah. Right. This is what De Milo says. I have a great faith in De Milo. He's a guy who's had lots and lots of experience at this. He says enlightenment is found through awareness. What you need is awareness, said the master to religious-minded disciple. Awareness, awareness, awareness. I know, so I seek to be aware of God's presence. And he replies, God awareness is a fantasy, for you have no notion of what God is like. Self-awareness is what you need. Later he said, if God is love, then the distance between God and you is the exact distance between you and awareness of yourself.
I don't understand the last paragraph. The third paragraph is exactly right. It goes along the lines of what I was just saying.
Yeah.
But if God is love, then the distance between yourself and God is the same distance between you and the awareness of yourself. I mean, I think that's on the ground, that's on the cusp of being impenetrable. But the third paragraph is perfectly sensible. You're saying what you think rather than what you think God thinks.
Well, what do you think he makes of it? What do you think he makes of that, Brian? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Do you mean paragraph 4?
Yeah. Any of it. Just give us the thoughts on that.
Well, one teacher put it very well, I felt, to me, and he said, awareness is God looking. So it's also telling us that God is looking through our eyes, wherever our attention is, wherever we're focused. And it also suggests God is present even when not looking. So in stillness, in silence, there's only, we're God in that still awareness, whether we're looking or not.
Again, Brian, is this a bit of a presumption? I mean, it's not fair of me to quote Helen, who's not here, and I wonder if she would be agreeing with what I'm saying about what she said, and I hope she's going to listen to the recording. But one of the things that struck me about Helen's philosophy is that God, insofar as you can conceive God, cannot know what it's like to see the world through human eyes. And Catherine said, well, that's why he sent his son Jesus to be on this earth. It's in a sense the same sort of problem, that something that is as immeasurably omniscient and omnipresent, is that being, entity, whatever you wish to call it, going to understand the flesh and blood reactions we have to what goes on around us? I mean, and it's it's a heck of a leap to say, yes, that's what he does or it does perceive. I mean, it may be true, of course, all this may be true, and if it speaks to you or it speaks to Brian, I have nothing to say there. But just standing back and looking at the principle, it seems to me that we can talk a bit of probabilities and possibilities, but that's what it is seems beyond our actual grasp.
The reaction is not God. The God is the awareness, but the reaction is the mind stepping in.
So God is the awareness, and we are all part
God is
of
just
that.
observing. Yeah, God is just aware of everything going on. But where we have preferences, likes, dislikes, desires, avoidances, that's where sort of our individual psychology or personality or ego comes in.
Well,
so
that
that's
one
why
can
they
see
say
that.
enlightenment is dissolving the ego.
I mean, again, you've made this point, Brian, many times, and I see that, and I see, and I don't cavil. I mean, that's the ego and the physical side of our beings that actually is of a lesser order than our what you would call, using the same word, awareness.
Pure awareness, which is impersonal. It's not ours, not mine or yours. It's everything.
Well, again, I think I know how you'll answer when you say that your awareness and my awareness is the same, and you seem to be saying now that it's also the awareness of God.
Yeah.
And this wonderful remark of, I think, King George II, splendid if true, are we really in a position to understand an entirely omniscient, non-corporeal being that we may be sharing a part of? But I'm suggesting throughout all this that whilst we may have grasped that part, is there not inevitably something immensely, immeasurably more immense? That's not what Roy and Brian are saying, Nora.
Being, that's a very important word. It's your mind at those moments.
Would describe as pure awareness. You're entering flashes of pure awareness. That's it, what we've been talking about. You're there.
Which is everything, that immensity Justin was speaking of.
Yeah. So you and God are one and the same. You are not separate from God. You and God, you are awareness. God is awareness, you're awareness. The whole universe is awareness. It doesn't have forms and shapes. It's just pure awareness.
So can I ask you the question in a different form from the one I've asked at the beginning? How do you know that that is all of what the universe is about? How do you know that there is not another part of the universe? I can't understand because of our senses. That's really what I'm saying.
It's really letting go of attachment to any ideas whatsoever, even points of view or anything. You cease to be attached to any of that.
Well, you're attached to this entire sort of scheme of things.
When you're in awareness, there are no boundaries.
No boundaries,
so
no
it's
attachment.
impossible that anything else could be there.
We all can experience, in fact, we all do experience it. The moment we fall asleep and the moment we wake up, before we've actually woken up, we experience that twice a day.
I mean, one can make a bit of sense of that if you're trying to make out, which is possible, that we're a microcosm of the whole, we're sort of, it's hologrammatical, and that we and the baby can experience this love somehow is part of the whole sort of scheme. And so God and the baby and the awareness all are, as it were, comparable.
That's the idea.
You are
That's it.
making a bit of a sort of leap of faith, if you will. I mean, it may be true, of course, I don't know, but it's
That
a
is
bit
what
of a
it's
leap of faith,
described
isn't it?
as. Yeah, exactly like that. I'm going to bring up some more. Just these are three quotes. They're just together, so you'll see it's all of the same vein. Within you there is a stillness and a sanctuary. Hermann Hesse. That stillness is awareness. It's a sanctuary. It's where we can, I wouldn't say retreat to, because we share that with the baby that Nora was talking about. We share it. As Nisargadatta says, life is really just about sharing. Not this, not that, it's just sharing. True nature emerge. Don't disturb your mind with seeking.
Well, what if my true nature is involves seeking? Well, I mean, it goes very deep. This seeking, this, I mean,
Let's see what the other one says. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. I that I am never wavers. Mindful breathing is my anchor. That's Thich Nhat Hanh. Just breathe, be present, and that stillness that I am never wavers.
yeah.
Feelings, all that just come and glow like clouds. Thoughts come and go like clouds, but you are absolutely unmoving. It's when you are mindful of it. You don't try to be mindful. It's when you are mindful of it. That is the key. You become totalness. That is what you describe. Just let your breathe be. That is mindfulness. That's what he's talking about.
Being
Actually,
present to breathing.
Not breathing. You're just present to your breathing, and the breathing happens all by itself.
and what I mean, and this to me makes a lot more sense than the fourth paragraph in the previous quote.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can quite see how we could all be, as it were, consonant with one another, with this sort of absence of mood and quietness and the rest. But I still would have a little niggle there that the presumption that that which you are and which you, as it were, divested yourself of all the different interests, activities, wishes, the things that go towards making that which you fundamentally are, you've divested yourself of all of that. What is left there still may have something of feeling in it, something that wells out inevitably of your body. It may be, therefore, that even if you've absolutely gone to the ultimate in following through the prescription, in following through this idea of being quiet and coming through to your inner stillness, the sanctuary that Hermann Hesse is talking about, there still may be something of feeling different for each of us, hard to actually define, that differentiates us. I mean, how do we know that that's not the case?
But it happens through us. I mean, we're still in that presence, but then all the feelings, thoughts, the doings, they arise and pass. It's even, in an active life, if we're in the present, in this sky that doesn't waver, all the life still goes on, including feelings, thoughts, and all the doing, but it's sort of happening. We're not doing it anymore. We're the sky.
Now, I mean, I'm following you here and I'm not disputing you, understand. I'm asking a question about one aspect of it. What about the person who, through no fault of his own and because of his essential character, has a dystopian attitude to the world? And therefore he looks, as when you're doing all the things that you want him to be doing, he looks not with a feeling of equanimity, but more but there is more involved in his thinking that is closer to dread. I mean, that's if you've got a dystopian personality. And I know you say you should get rid of your personality, and he's done everything he can. He's Buddha. He's done everything he can to divest himself of his personality. But he's got a fundamental way of looking through his eyes at the world. The way you say God can look through our eyes, which again is another of these very difficult sort of positions to take, but fine.
I think the
And
problem there is that the idea you've got to get rid of something, you don't get rid of anything. There was nothing in the first place. This is where we come unstuck. We're trying to get rid of things or change things, or you don't. You just be. And let's see what the next.
Suffering will push him in the direction of letting go.
Yeah. These are rather different, but I think we had some interesting comments about it. Grace means that all your mistakes now serve as a purpose instead of serving shame.
Are you not saying it's the trouble with all these couplets? It's saying all of these things are saying something of sense, but to assume that they somehow encapsulate everything that can be said about the subject is where we're always going wrong. I mean, the idea that a mistake can be serving a purpose is something we can well understand. We do that ourselves, but unless you are defining that absence of censure as what Brené Brown means by grace. And you simply defined it in those terms. But otherwise, what he's saying, it makes sense. It's just that he's put a definition on it, i.e., grace, which is
Yeah.
where you can have your sort of verbal
Justin,
dispute.
do you learn from your mistakes?
Well, I think
If you make
absolutely.
a mistake, do you learn from it?
Not
Is
only
there a
does one
lesson?
learn from them, but the mistakes are incredibly useful.
That the lesson, yeah, the lesson you've learned, that's what we call grace. By the grace of God go I. By the grace of the teacher teaching me, whoever the teacher is, even if it's your inner being that's teaching you, that's grace. Serve a purpose because the grace gives you the gift of lessons, the gift of learning, rather than complaining. You see the lesson.
Well,
That's
it's a
what she's
definition
getting
that
at
makes
here.
sense. You can define
This
it.
means, yeah,
It's
it's
a blessing.
consideration. If you have consideration for somebody, that's grace. Brian, you had a comment?
Oh, it's a blessing. It's like a lesson, a benefit for you. What it is.
When you're very present, you learn the lesson. You say, "Oh God, I can see why I did that." That's grace. That's what we mean by grace. That's what grace is in this case.
And you say, "Thank you, God. Now give me another lesson."
He'll throw you under another rock somewhere until you learn not to be thrown under rocks. This is the great one. One of the biggest causes of suffering to me are expectations. Act without expect. Everything I do, I have an expectation of what the outcome's going to be. And so because it doesn't turn out the way I want it to, I get really distressed. So nearly all my problems come from my expectations of what's going to happen. I give somebody a gift and I expect a response and they don't give me a response in the way that I thought. That's expectation. And I say, oh, the bastard, why didn't he thank you? So expectation is like a real wrench in the system. It tears everything apart. Expectation does for me.
But this
If I
is,
can just give and just not worry about,
but I mean, in one again, this is the problem with all of these sayings that they're saying something that's very valid, and I think what you're saying there, Roy, is very valid indeed. But on the other hand, I say almost everything with the expectation that it's going to induce some form of reaction, including from you now.
yes.
Should I just be speaking without the presumption that I'm going to have an effect?
No, you just say it and see what happens. You act and watch the response and not just see what happens. When I did this, then that what every scientist does it. They don't know what's going to happen until they try it out. They do an experiment and they see the result.
You're expecting a result of your experiment, even if it's not the expectation particularly that you're counting on.
That's when you expect a particular result. That's the problem.
Ah, well, that makes more sense.
That's it. It's don't expect a particular result. There will always be a result. Every motion you make will create a result of some sort.
But are you
And
never
that
to
is the
wish for
lesson we learn.
results? Are you never
So,
to wish for results?
are you saying sorry?
Are you never to wish for results? Are you
Oh,
never?
you can wish for results, but by being attached to what you want gives you the suffering. By saying, I'd like that to happen, but if it doesn't happen, I'll learn the lesson. While Lao Tzu's act, expecting a particular result of what they do. And that's where they don't just, if we're just open minded and just see what happens. Another
Again,
one, and what,
it's true up to a point, but
of
it's
course,
quite
they're all true up to a point. This is the point. Because they're true up to a point, you see what's true in it and you see what isn't.
yeah,
That's the
that's fair
lesson.
enough.
That's it. They all mean something. And Even a little smidgen of truth gives us something, a better understanding. That's all.
That's absolutely right, Roy. I absolutely would accept that. But I mean, for instance, I had a job which involved, getting all manner of people of some consequence together to discuss an international hot potato. If and there was I was acting the whole time, day in, day out, for 25 years, in the expectation that the particular event that I was going on in each month would work out. I had to have an expectation, and if it was constantly going wrong, then I would have to adjust my actions. So I have to have expectations. You can't just junk it, but to actually assume something is going to happen and be disappointed if it doesn't, is where it's making more sense.
Yeah. It's the point there is that yes, you have expectations, but are you attached to those expectations? If you are, then you'll suffer if it goes wrong. But if you're not attached, you say, oh, it didn't work out the way I've learned it.
Trying to axe out the suffering is that not a slightly strange thing?
Yeah.
That if something goes wrong, okay, it goes wrong and you don't suffer. I mean,
Well,
that's
so,
probably better, but
no, it's
It
if
can
you're
turn out
attached,
better than
the
you had
more attached.
intended.
So go on, Brian. Sorry.
Or it can turn out better. It may
Yeah.
turn out, way better than you could have imagined.
Yeah.
yes, that's
Yeah.
Not
absolutely right.
necessarily negative.
And you know
Absolutely
to do
right.
the same thing the next time because you get more of it.
And Brian's absolutely right there. And
Yeah, and
that's
the
my
last one here,
experience.
we're coming up to our 6 o'clock. I rather like this one because it was really meaningful to me when I got it. And what greater might do we possess as human beings than our capacity to question and learn? It's all about what we've been talking about. If we're open to question and learn rather than say, no, no, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. Open questions and learn is the greatest gift we can give to the world.
Would you say, I mean, I would agree with this. I'm not sort of arguing it particularly. Would you say that all of us have had a receptivity here to not just to question, which we've been doing, but to learn? Have we learned from each other, or are we in the same place we were at the beginning?
I think I've learned.
Well, is it true I am Brian? Or is it, could I be actually that big awareness you were talking about, unlimited in the flow?
Well, I think that
Open,
is
yeah,
actually one of the
it's
things that differentiates mankind as a species from the rest of the animal kingdom. This conscious idea that we're trying to find out what's going on inside ourselves and the world and all these other questions. That is one of the big differentiating factors. That we go on a little bit too far in saying that is in what our might consists.
stop recording. Okay.